Karen ripped off my niece's bracelet. She didn't know I was the Surgeon General. They say evil often wears pearls and a smile. I met it in a sun hat. My name's Dr. Nyla Monroe. Most people know me as the United States Surgeon General, or they did, before I resigned. Not out of scandal, out of fury, out of heartbreak, out of a child's scream that split a summer day wide open. It happened in Crestfall Meadows, a gated neighborhood in Virginia, where I moved after years overseas. I'd bought the house for my sister Marlene and her daughter, Joy, a brilliant 7-year-old with severe anaphylaxis and a rare cardiovascular condition that requires 24/7 alert wearables and emergency response gear. I was taking a sabbatical to be with family, a quiet community with lush gardens, well-maintained sidewalks, and alleged family values seemed ideal. But Crestfall had termites in its trim, and the queen among them was a woman named Claudette Bensley, or as everyone whispered, Karen of the cul-de-sac. She chaired what she claimed was the Shadow Board, an informal HOA that hadn't legally existed for over 5 years, but operated with unchecked pettiness. She issued fake notices, trespassed with abandon, and patrolled like a sheriff in a town of children. We met during Joy's first week there. It was the middle of June, cicadas buzzing, hydrangeas exploding in color. Joy had just gotten out of her checkup at Walter Reed, and I'd promised her an afternoon in the park. She wore her custom pink medical bracelet, one she was proud of, engraved with her allergies, blood type, and emergency contact chip. It also had a built-in pulse oximeter synced to my phone. Joy was drawing with chalk on the sidewalk. I was scrolling my emails under a tree when I heard the bark. Not a dog's Karen's. Oh no, 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 absolutely not. Claudette marched across the grass like she was storming Normandy. What is that on her wrist? I stood up. Excuse me, that bracelet, it's fluorescent. It's an eyesore, and it violates community presentation standards? I blinked. You're referring to a medical device that monitors my niece's blood oxygen levels. She's drawing all over the sidewalk, and now there's this contraption. This is a family neighborhood, not a hospital ward. She's a child with a heart condition. Karen didn't blink. She leaned down, snarling like Joy was a criminal. Little girl, take that thing off before I report you. That was when I stepped between them. You'll do no such thing, I said calmly. And if you ever address her again without me present, I'll file a restraining order. Karen hissed yes, hissed and stormed off. I thought that was the end. It was just the beginning. Claudette Bensley never backed down. She didn't let the restraining order threat scare her. She didn't even flinch when I told her Joy had nearly died twice before her 5th birthday. No, she doubled down. The next morning, I found a typed notice taped to our front door, signed in calligraphy-style font with Crestfall Standards Enforcement Visual Disruption Citation. It claimed Joy's bracelet violated neighborhood color schemes and permanent wearable accessories that convey alarmist messaging. Alarmist. It saved her life. It was a fake HOA notice. Obviously, the real HOA had been dissolved in 2018 due to a corruption case, but Claudette ran her neighborhood the way an old Southern debutante might run a plantation. Passive-aggressive charm weaponized into fake authority. The day it happened, it was unusually hot. July sweltered against the pavement, and Joy was wilting despite her wide-brimmed hat. We stopped by the small park by the gazebo for shade. I laid out a quilt, unpacked some snacks, and tapped into Joy's medical readings via my phone. Her O2 levels were low. I'd brought her EpiPen and liquid oxygen backup in a small red bag. Just as I was adjusting her sensor, I turned away to grab her water bottle from the cooler. That's when I heard the scream, a sharp scream Joy's. I turned around in a blur and saw Claudette, standing over her, the pink bracelet clutched in her hand. She doesn't need this garish junk, she barked. It's causing an eyesore. People are staring. Joy was on the ground, her tiny arm outstretched, red from where the bracelet had been yanked off. I don't remember crossing the distance, only that I tackled her not violently, but with purpose, slapping the bracelet out of her hand and scooping Joy into my arms. People had already begun to gather. One teenager had pulled out his phone. A mother gasped and dialed 911. An elderly man shook his head and muttered, "She's gone too far now." Joy was shaking in my arms, her breath coming fast and shallow. Her O2 levels were dropping. I reattached the bracelet, thankfully not damaged, and used her app's emergency protocol to stabilize her vitals. Meanwhile, Claudette was ranting at the crowd. "She's lying. I'm protecting the aesthetics of this neighborhood. You can't let them just bring in hospital equipment like toys. What if it sets off children? What if it attracts the wrong element?" The crowd's silence was like a growing wall, cold, angry, immovable. Paramedics arrived. They checked Joy. One recognized me. "Dr. Monroe," he asked. Eyes wide. "The Surgeon General former," I muttered, brushing Joy's curls back. Then his tone shifted. "Cold, professional. She just assaulted a minor," he said, nodding to Claudette. "She was wearing that thing for drama," Claudette shrieked. "It's all performance. It's a Class A, FDA-cleared medical device," I said, standing fully now. "You tampered with it. That's federal interference with a medical instrument? On a child? In public?" The young EMT nodded. "We've got it all on video. You're not going to like what comes next." Karen didn't know how right he was. 3 hours later, the entire town knew. The video hit local Facebook groups within the hour. A caption read, "Crestfall woman rips medical bracelet. From child's wrist gets confronted by former Surgeon General." It went viral. People started sharing screenshots. Parents across the county voiced outrage. Black community groups pointed out the racial dimension. Would Claudette have done that to a white child? Elderly veterans from my former hospital posted solidarity messages. Pediatric nurses offered to testify. But it wasn't the public yet that mattered most. It was the neighbors. The ones who lived next door, across the street, the ones she controlled, or so she thought. That evening, I heard a knock at the door. It was Mr. Liang, a quiet accountant from across the cul-de-sac. Behind him were 5 more residents. One woman held a dusty manila folder. We thought you should see this," Mr. Liang said, glancing nervously around. Inside the folder were copies of dozens of fake citations Claudette had sent over the years. Visual disorder, improper plant choice, non-compliant car color, even inappropriate wind chimes. "Most of us just paid the fake fines," one woman whispered. "She said she had legal authority. She scared us. She told me if I put a mezuzah on my door, she'd fine me for religious clutter." Another said, "She took my daughter's wheelchair flag down." Mr. Liang added softly, "Said it was too political." I didn't need to ask the next question. It hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Claudette wasn't a neighborhood protector. She was a tyrant. And now she had picked the wrong child. At the wrong time. In the wrong town. What we had now wasn't just an angry neighbor. We had a digital paper trail, a whistleblowing crew of terrified residents, and a viral video that had turned a sleepy Virginia suburb into a national talking point. But Claudette Bensley was still walking free. She hadn't apologized, hadn't even slowed down. Instead, she doubled her efforts. By the following Tuesday, she had printed over 50 flyers with the words, "They're lying to you. Protect your community from fraudsters." She handed them out at the community mailbox kiosk while smiling like nothing happened. But I wasn't the same woman who took sabbatical for peace and family. I was the Surgeon General who had once faced anthrax outbreaks and Ebola scares in war zones. And I'd just been shoved into a war of a different kind with HOA weaponization as its weapon. "They're not fake fines," Claudette told a Channel 4 reporter on live TV. "I've been elected unofficially by community consensus. I've only ever enforced order." That child's bracelet was dangerous and distracting. The anchor blinked slowly. "You mean her medical bracelet? She had lights on it. She was using it for attention. I have every right to demand it be removed. She passed out from oxygen deprivation. It's not my fault her family thinks they can parade illness around like a circus act." The clip was less than 2 minutes. By nightfall, it had been remixed into TikToks, memes, and condemnation pieces. But the real twist came from a source I never expected. Joy's school counselor, Ms. Camille Ortiz, a quiet woman in her 50s, called me personally. "I'm not supposed to say this," she whispered, but Claudette tried to get Joy suspended. For what she called the school, and said the medical devices Joy wears were disruptive to the learning environment. She even sent what looked like legal letters backing up her claim. I sat down hard. "Camille," I said carefully, "are those letters still at the school?" She paused. Then, yes, I scanned everything. The letters were full of bluff and bombast, fake stationery, misused legal language, threats of liability and community arbitration, but tucked into one was something different, a signature that didn't match Claudette's. A printed name, Raymond T. Bracknell, Title President, Crestfall Neighborhood Preservation Council Organization, Community Standards and Wellness Association, Virginia Region 6. It sounded official, but I'd never heard of it. That's when I called my old contact at the Department of Health and Human Services, Dr. Priya Kumar, now head of Community Health Compliance Enforcement. She listened in silence as I explained. Then she said, "Send me everything. I think you've just stumbled on something bigger." The next week was a whirlwind. Priya and I uncovered what could only be described as a shadow network of fake HOAs, a system of self-appointed neighborhood boards operating without legal status, but holding real psychological and social power. They filed baseless citations. They imposed illegal fines and collected thousands. They doctored documents to make it look like they were backed by regional coalitions, and they used property value protection as the veil to racially and economically discriminate. Claudette was the queen of one small corner, but Raymond Bracknell, he was the kingpin. A former land surveyor turned grifter. He had registered over a dozen nonprofit neighborhood wellness organizations, none of them certified. He preyed on neighborhoods with weak or dissolved HOAs. Then he found locals like Claudette Van, power-hungry busybodies with no real oversight, and gave them fake authority in exchange for monthly kickbacks. And yes, every single one of them targeted disabled residents, families of color, and medical accommodations. This wasn't HOA gone rogue. This was a coordinated system of oppression disguised as suburban order. "You're not just dealing with a Karen," Priya said. "You're dealing with a cartel of Karens." So we gathered our coalition. We had former HOA members who had been bullied out, parents of disabled children who'd been fined for medical ramps, a war widow who was forced to repaint her memorial mailbox 3 times, and a wheelchair user who was fined for his clunky porch rails. Mr. Liang hosted the meetings in his garage. I drafted affidavits and impact statements. Priya prepared the federal complaints. We didn't go to war with picket signs. We built a case file thicker than the Crestfall phone book. And as it grew, so did the number of allies. Even Claudette's former friends, wine-sipping tennis moms who once laughed at her jokes, began defecting when they saw her meltdown on live TV again. This time calling Joy a walking liability. The mask had slipped. Now it was time to pull the whole costume off. The community center hadn't been this full since the 4th of July fireworks ban. Now every chair was occupied, some by residents gripping citation slips, others by parents holding children close. I stood near the front, not in uniform but in conviction, flanked by Camille, Mr. Liang, and a pro bono civil rights attorney from DRC named Ezra DeWitt. At the far end, seated behind a plastic fold-out table like she was queen of the kingdom, sat Claudette Bensley. Her mouth was fixed in a smug little line. She wore a bright floral blazer and had brought laminated folders labeled "Evidence of Community Decline," inside photos of wind chimes, lawn gnomes, a child's wheelchair ramp, and of course, Joy's pink medical bracelet. It would have been laughable if it hadn't been horrifying. The county had been forced to hold this emergency meeting after overwhelming media pressure and public outcry. The hashtag #BraceletJustice had trended for 3 days. The video of Claudette yanking Joy's bracelet had been viewed 14.6 million times. And the discovery of the fake HOA cartel, thanks to Priya's coordination with federal housing enforcement, had triggered a class action investigation. But this hearing, this was for the neighborhood, for Crestfall to look itself in the mirror and for the mirror to finally crack. The moderator, an interim community liaison named Charisse Mendoza, cleared her throat. "We are not an active HOA," she began, "but this emergency town forum has been called due to the mounting concern over alleged abuse of power by resident Claudette Bensley, as well as possible participation in a broader fraudulent HOA scheme." She looked directly at Claudette. "Mrs. Bensley, do you wish to respond to the allegations before we open the floor?" Claudette stood very slow and theatrical, like she was accepting an Oscar. "I have only ever acted in the best interest of this community. Some people don't understand order. Some people think everything should be tolerated: unsightly lawn furniture, disruptive children, loud musical instruments, and yes, even medically unnecessary attention-seeking devices." A murmur of gasps and outrage erupted. Camille stood. "You ripped medical equipment from a child's body." Claudette scoffed. "It was blinking. It was pink. It was a distraction." I rose from my seat and stepped forward. "My niece Joy is 7 years old. She has survived 2 emergency cardiac events, 1 severe anaphylactic attack, and a rare O2 instability disorder that requires constant monitoring. That distraction saved her life 3 times." More murmurs. A woman in the back began to cry softly. Claudette turned red, but not with shame. "Why do you people always make it about race and sympathy? You're trying to make a martyr out of her? That girl has no place." The crowd turned. Someone stood up and shouted, "Sit down." And then Ezra DeWitt stepped to the front. He opened a binder, laid out multiple state and federal documents on the table, and said in a calm, clear voice, "Ladies and gentlemen, I represent several residents of Crestfall Meadows in a class action against Claudette Bensley for fraud, emotional damages, and unlawful coercion. Attached here are the IRS filings of the fake nonprofits she has been part of, including the so-called Community Standards and Wellness Association, which has never been recognized by any legal authority." He paused, letting that sink in. And this he held up one page as a receipt of monthly payments made by Mrs. Bensley to one Raymond T. Bracknell, a man under federal investigation for racketeering, wire fraud, and coordinated intimidation through illegal housing enforcement. The silence was deafening. Claudette tried to laugh. "That's fake. Anyone can Photoshop a name." But Camille had had enough. She pulled out her phone and hit play. Claudette's voice rang out a voicemail left months ago. "Raymond, I told you I sent the checks. The neighbors are starting to talk. That damn Monroe woman is stirring things up. If we don't shut her down, they'll all find out we never had legal status." Gasps, shouts, phones lifted to record. Claudette's knees buckled. Her hand reached for the table to steady herself. Charisse's voice broke through. "Mrs. Bensley, please vacate the floor." But Claudette wasn't done. She shrieked, "You're all sheep. You let that government woman poison your minds. You think she cares about you. She's just another bureaucrat. This place used to be beautiful from the crowd. No, it was just scared. Police officers were waiting outside. They escorted Claudette out without handcuffs but surrounded by silence. No one protested. No one shouted. Some simply looked away. It was over. But the damage she had done, the fear she had cultivated, would take more than a public fall to undo. That night, our little coalition gathered at Mr. Liang's again. We toasted with sparkling cider and lemonade. Camille brought brownies. Joy played with Ezra's daughter, the 2 of them giggling as they painted the sidewalk in wild, joyful colors. It felt like something was healing. Not completely, but enough to breathe again. 2 months later, Joy's medical bracelet was in a museum. Not just any museum, the National Museum of African American History and Culture. It sat in a small display marked "Objects of Resistance, Dignity in the Face of Everyday Tyranny." Next to it, a photo of Joy smiling in her pink dress, fist raised in defiance, with the caption, "Joy Monroe." Age 7, her medical bracelet was called an eyesore. It ended up starting a movement. The fake HOA cartel had crumbled. Raymond Bracknell had been arrested in Ohio, while trying to flee with shredded documents. His files uncovered a network of 43 communities across 5 states, all under the guise of decorum and community health. He'd siphoned over $3.2 million in fake fines and donations over a decade. Claudette Bensley. She was convicted of multiple counts of fraud, intimidation, and tampering with medical devices. She got 3 years of supervised release and a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation. But her real sentence was public shame. No amount of pearls could fix that. The fallout wasn't just legal, it was cultural. Within weeks, national outlets picked up the story. Bracelet Gate. When a Karen crossed the Surgeon General, HOA tyranny or neighborhood order, the pink band that sparked a reckoning. From HOA harassment to federal investigation, the story of little joy and big justice. Schools added lessons about disability rights and neighborhood discrimination. A senator from Maryland proposed the Community Oversight and Fairness Act, requiring all HOAs to be registered, reviewed, and transparent. No more shadow boards. No more fake fines. And our once fractured neighborhood, it started holding monthly potlucks in the same park where it all began. I'll never forget the first one. Mr. Liang brought homemade dumplings. Camille brought Joy a canvas tote that read, "Tiny but mighty." Ezra showed up with a portable speaker playing Aretha Franklin. I stood under the old oak tree, the same one where I'd once stood frozen as Claudette snatched a bracelet from my niece's wrist. Now Joy was running circles around it strong, laughing, pink bracelet glowing in the sun like a badge of honor. People still ask me what it felt like, being dragged into a war I didn't choose. Watching a child suffer because someone thought aesthetics mattered more than life. Facing down a woman who embodied every inch of faux authority this country sometimes refuses to see. And I tell them this. It felt like holding my breath until the country exhaled with me. 1 week after the trial, I received a letter. No name on the return address. Just a single sentence inside. I used to be like her. Now I won't be. Thank you for breaking the spell. I don't know who wrote it, but maybe that's the point. Maybe these fights, the ones we don't sign up for, are the ones that ripple deepest. What would you have done if you saw someone rip a medical device off a child? Have you ever experienced fake authority being used to silence the vulnerable? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about justice, neighborhood power, and what we owe each other when no one else is watching.